Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Geek Garage Podcast. I am your host, David Dassall. Like always, we're going to go ahead and get to our topic today. It is open source marketing. What is open source marketing, you say? That's a good question. I actually don't know what it means at all, which is why I brought on one of my good friends to help explain it to my dumbass brain. No, I'm kidding. I actually helped coin the term of this episode. It's essentially finding free knowledge for whatever it is you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what we are doing today to accomplish marketing knowledge. We want to impart free knowledge on how to find free knowledge. Isn't that right, Brianna?
I mean, yeah, we're not going to charge you any money for it. It's all free. At
Yes,
least I
this
hope that's the plan.
right. As of this moment, this podcast is free for now. But you know what? That may change. I'm just joking. This podcast will never cost anyone money. But yes, this is a good opportunity for me to introduce my guest today. She is a marketing, not a guru,
Not a
but
guru.
no, we're gonna get to that later.
Mm-hmm.
But she's a badass. She is an amazing friend. She does all kinds of crazy shit with marketing that makes my fucking head spin, and she drops some knowledge bombs on me every single day. It's Brianna Reed, darling. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So to give listeners context, David and I have been friends for several years now. And
Yes.
we've been working together on a YouTube channel called Two Player Media, which is how I met you and some of the other strapping young gentlemen that we used to make content with. And I had been working in marketing for a few years by then, and I decided that I wanted to get into the realm of content marketing. And then it just so happened that at one point you were looking for a job, so then you came on to the company I was working at. So David and I actually go like far back into like a lot of different buckets.
Hmm.
Um, but I guess like if we want to talk about credentials, I've been doing professional marketing on several levels for about 8 years now. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in web design and interactive media. I'm also digital marketing certified from Google. And mostly what I've done the past few 8 years has been client based. So I was working at an agency or something like that where people would come to us with their marketing needs and produce that. And I've worked with everyone from like content creators to small business to a bunch of really big names. So if I want to get a little name droppy, it would involve some people like UPS, Lyft, Panera Bread, Aflac, Goodwill, Ferrari, Equifax.
Who are those? I've never heard of any of those
It's a
people.
lot. Yeah, it's a
UPS
lot of people. A
is
lot of
that
people.
unified, personable. Sorry, that's not funny.
It's UFO placement systems, I think is what it's called. Yeah.
Right, and Lyft, that they sound dumb. They sound like they don't make any money at all.
Yeah. Uber totally does not hate them at all.
Right.
It's a rant
Yeah,
for
like
another time. Actually,
yeah,
Uber. The funny part is like I've been more involved with Lyft than I was with Uber, but Uber was one of my clients at one point. So
sure. Which I guess makes sense in some form or fashion because like
hmm
the people who started Lyft actually started at Uber,
yeah.
and that's how Lyft got started. Is I guess there was some disagreements, but yeah, like you said, that's a conversation for another time. But yes, so like I said, today we are going to be discussing how to go about marketing yourself and your brand, your side gig, your side
hmm
hustle, your business, whatever it is you do that where you create content or material or whatever for the internet or physically. Um, we're going to talk about how to find the best information. We're going to give you information as
hmm
well as give you information on how to find the best information. If that makes any sense at all, I promise. If it doesn't, I promise it will all kind of like fall into place here in just a few moments when we get the ball rolling. Um, I think Brianna has my back on that.
Well, I kind of believe in the philosophy of you don't just want to hold people's hands, you want to teach them how to like fly on their own, you know? So
Right.
I I was writing the show notes and I wanted to make sure that when people listen to this, they're not just relying on one piece of information. They know how to look up this information not only in a way that serves them, but is also responsible. A rant that we'll get to in a bit is there's a lot of places that are a little shady.
Yes, a few.
Yeah, so you have to be a little careful out there. Just with anything. I mean, it's the internet. You never know what you're going to run into. But
Right.
um,
Uh, yeah. So I guess let's go ahead and kick it off. So, uh, you've been like you said, you've been working in marketing for quite a while,
mhm.
enough to show up the average mofo. You so it sounds like you get a lot of the same questions over and over again.
Oh yeah. So I the type of marketing that I deal with clients, believe it or not, is very similar to what you would do as an individual who owns like a podcast, for example. So I get a lot of questions about like how do I get people to like my Facebook page, or how do I get people to buy my stuff, or how do I get people to watch my YouTube channel, whatever the case may be, right?
Mhm.
And I discovered that, I enjoy giving advice on a one-on-one level, but as went by, it kind of felt like I was a broken record, and I just kept saying the same thing over and over. And so I started researching this information myself to see what was actually out there. Um, and it feels like to me that a lot of marketing advice out there, it's one of two things. And of course this isn't like for everything, there are good sources out there, but it's one or two things. One, it's like a half-assed blog post that doesn't really describe a whole lot of what you're actually supposed to be doing, or two, it's behind like a $400 paywall. And neither of those is really helpful, so I try to do my best to teach people like what they actually need to be doing, but it's frustrating that the information just isn't like available, right?
Right.
So I think what people need to realize is that the advice you're going to find, it's going to change depending on what context you need. And if you're going to be looking stuff up, for example, like you need to be a little specific. So like say that you are running a podcast about comic books and you're trying to get in front of an audience of people who read comic books, for example. You're not just going to want to look up how to get podcast listeners, because I mean everything that you find is going to be generic as fuck. But if you look up how to get people who like comic books to listen to my podcast or whatever, as a little bit more specific to what the issue you have. And I think people get hung up on the general advice and they don't really know what they're supposed to be doing. So
Are you trying to call me out right now, Brianna?
a little
Because
bit.
you're like, hey, David, your googling skills are shit. Why don't you tighten that up?
It's something I've noticed though. Like people all the time, like, they ask me these questions and then I go down a Google like search hole and then all of a sudden I find something that's relevant. And now unfortunately when you're in a certain niche, like a geeky type niche, like we are, sometimes you just can't find that content.
Right.
But um I think the one thing that I wish people would know is that there are no marketing secrets.
Right.
Like the marketing secret, like woo stuff, like doesn't actually exist. Like there are a lot of people who seem to have the impression that people who work in marketing are just kind of like hiding these secrets from everyone.
Mm.
Here's what goes into marketing: you got time, you got patience, strategy, planning, and to be completely honest, money. Which I realize is not an available resource for everyone, but the more money or budget you have for marketing, obviously, it's going to be a better return. But a lot of what I do in my career actually doesn't cost a lot of money, believe it or not, or doesn't have to. Granted, like say Coca Cola came to you and wanted to run an ad campaign, well, then they would probably spend like $1 million on like TV commercials and like advertisements in like the Super Bowl or like whatever, right? But obviously that isn't realistic. And I think what people get hung up on is like, well, I don't have any money for marketing. What do I do? Um, a lot of it is just time
Hmm.
and consistency and just constantly posting and like telling people, if you do like a live stream or if you have like a podcast or something, like, hey, I post every Wednesday, I stream every Friday. I just, just showing up. And I think what's really frustrating is that doesn't always bring in a return as fast as some people want.
Hmm.
But if you want your audience to grow, you just got to keep showing up.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing. Probably one of the biggest things that I've learned personally with the podcast, and I've mentioned this a few times here recently and in the past, is that we've learned through the hard way and like physically connecting with people at conventions doing
Mhm,
marketing that
mhm.
people strive on consistent content.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily like sticking to like a weekly schedule or bi-weekly schedule. Like you don't have to hold yourself accountable to like produce content on like every single day of the week, like every Monday or every other Monday. But like just having some sort of consistency
Mhm.
is one of the biggest keys. And Brianna, just like you said, it's not going to come automatically. Like, don't think that just because you start doing that, that all of a sudden you're going to see this huge influx of like either profit if you're selling something or like listeners if you have a podcast or site visitors if you have a blog or whatever. But like that is one of the huge stepping stones to just upping your marketing game.
Well, for example, too, like I don't work agency side anymore. I am on the marketing team for a software company.
Hmm.
And what one of the struggles that we sometimes have with our sales team is that they want results now. They
Right.
want the leads, they want the marketing efforts to funnel into money, which it does eventually. Like that's why we do marketing is to sell our software to prospects. But some of the stuff that we do, like it's not going to have an immediate return. Like we have to set the expectation with the sales team. Like the stuff that we're doing, you're probably not going to see any leads or sales from it for at least 6 months.
Right.
And it's kind of the same with content. You don't necessarily have to funnel a bunch of money into it, but like it doesn't matter if you have money or not. Like just shit takes time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have a better answer to that. And I think what happens is a lot of people they start their blog or their podcast or their business, and after 3 months they're burnt out on it and they just quit. And I'm like, you can't quit. Like you have to keep going or else it's just gonna completely fail.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I get a lot of like wide eyes when I tell people that the podcast has survived 3 years,
Hmm.
and I wish I could say that my eyes aren't wider than theirs because I too am super surprised that the podcast has lasted this long. Because just like you explained, it takes a lot of time and effort, and you get burnt out and exhausted really
Hmm.
easily if you don't know how to just properly go about all the different facets of what you're doing. So it is easy to get burnt out after a while, and then things just kind of drop off or fall at the wayside, get put on the
Hmm.
back burner, and then all of a sudden it becomes something that you're not even doing anymore. So yeah, like I totally get that. It's a huge issue, and huge huge potential problem. So yeah, so I think for our first kind of big segment, Brianna, you had some marketing foundations that you had written up.
Yeah, so I think one of the issues that a lot of new people, whether they're like a content creator or a small business owner, is they don't really do a lot of the footwork up front before they kind of get into it, which is fair. Like, if no one's telling you to do that, then why would you not do
Sure.
it?
Right.
Um, but the great thing about the footwork is that it can be retroactive. You can go back and do it even though you've already started.
Hmm.
And I call it like marketing foundations because it's something that even though you can retroactively do it, it's something that you really need to lay the base foundation for everything that you do. Um,
Yes.
so I've defined 5 of them. This is not based off of like any like crazy like psychology that I learned from some professor back in the day. This is just my experience.
Hmm.
So you need to know, one, what you're doing, two, why you're doing it, three, who you're doing it for, four, what problems it solves, and then five, your unique selling proposition. And I will get into all those one by one. So you need to know what you're doing. This one feels obvious, but it might not be at first. So, like, what are you doing? Maybe you are a Twitch streamer and you want to stream playing games online. Great. Except that there are like a million of them online right now, right? So, what helps is like when you're
There's so
sending,
many Twitch streamers.
yeah, there's so many. That's ridiculous. It's easy to get into, like you just buy a webcam and
Right.
a mic and you go. But um yeah, you need to really know like not only what you're streaming, like, but how niche it is. So like do you only stream old like retro games, or do you only play role playing games? Do you only play like Fortnite? Whatever it is, like it's going to really impact all these other foundations. So you need to really define like what it is that you're doing. Um, and the next step after that is like, why am I doing it? Right. So let's go back to the Twitch streamer example. Say that you stream old video games. Um, why are you doing it? Is it because you want to see more content that involves old retro video games? Are you doing it because you just really like playing them? Do you want to connect with other people who enjoy doing them? Um, and it doesn't really have to be a world changing answer either. It can literally just because I was bored and I wanted to do something fun. That's a totally okay answer. It's just as long as you know why you're doing it. The only advice I'll give is don't do it for money because you will hate yourself and you will quit.
Yeah, I will definitely attest to that. I will also attest to the whole like I was bored and I just wanted to do something that sounded like a lot of fun.
Mhm,
That's exactly why I started the podcast. People were like making podcasts,
mhm,
and I hadn't heard of one yet that did all kinds of like geeky topics. Like it wasn't just centric to like anime or
mhm,
cosplay or like digital gaming, analog gaming. Something that covered a broad spectrum of things because like
mhm.
I have ADHD, which is also something we're going to get to in a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's very much my personality type. I just like to talk about all different kinds of stuff within the realm of geek and nerd culture.
Mhm,
So there's that, and like I said, I was just I was kind of bored, but like I also just wanted to make something neat. Like I've always
mhm.
been like some sort of content creator at heart. So Brianna, just like you said, it's totally acceptable if your answer is like I'm bored and I want to do something.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like I'm going to solve world hunger. Like it doesn't have to be like that. It could just be I wanted to do something with my buds, and that's a good
Right.
enough answer. As long as you know that that's the why, I think that's the most important part. You also need to know again the third one on the list here is who you're doing it for, which is
Hmm.
also really really important.
Yeah.
Um, so an example that I'd come up with was, and this is an example I've seen in real life. So say you're a parent, but you're kind of like a geeky like gamer parent, which is a little bit different than most of like the mommy type blogs that you see out there, which are very um
Gross.
basic. Yeah. Let's just be
Those
real.
PSL latte drinking
Hey, I love me
big
some pumpkin
udders.
spice. Don't get me wrong, but goodness,
I
yeah,
know. I'm
they're
not trying to paint with a broad brush here,
no,
but
we're just big assholes, but they're very generic, unfortunately. And so what works in the content realm of things is being a little bit more niche.
Mhm.
And so what if you wrote a parenting blog that had to do with raising like a gamer, like how to play Magic the Gathering with your kids, or like how what video games are acceptable for a 10-year-old to play, like stuff like that. I think is
Right.
is really cool. Um so when you get into that sort of topic, then at that point it's going to be like, well, who am I writing for? Well, probably other geeky parents who just want to find other parents who are interested in the stuff they're in, and maybe their kids could hang out. Like, it's just stuff like that. It's really, really important, because if you don't know who you're doing it for, then you're going to be all over the place. And then, like, no
Right.
one's going to know what you're about or, like, why you're doing it. So, the fourth one, and again, this doesn't have to be a world changing answer. What problems are you solving? And I think a lot of people get stuck on this one because they don't really feel like they're solving a problem. But believe it or not, boredom is a problem. And if you are doing something purely for entertainment, such as doing a podcast or doing like a Twitch stream or something like that, it's okay. The problem is just solving boredom, whether it be
Right.
boredom for yourself or boredom for people who are listening. A problem that's really common in today's world is a lot of people feel really disconnected. So it's nice to create content that's really relevant to what they're going through, or what they're interested in. And so that's another problem you could have.
Yeah.
But also you can get a little bit more specific. Like, say you've been like, you, Dave, you've been writing a podcast for 3 years. What if you wrote a blog post that was like how to set up a podcast? And I'm
Hmm.
sure some people would appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it kind of rebrands you a little bit, not just as a content creator, but also as like an authority figure.
Sure.
Which sounds silly because, like, at the end of the day, like, most content creators kind of just, we don't really feel like professionals. We just kind of like, we're just doing our thing. But when you've been doing a
Right.
podcast for 3 years, like, that's pretty impressive.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Like you like it's okay to have some self-deprecating humor, but you also have to give yourself some credit. Like
yeah.
you may not have the listenership or the readership or following that you may want, or the kind of following that generates actual money and revenue, but that doesn't necessarily equate to quote unquote success.
Mhm.
It still means that you stood the test of time for what you're trying to do. You're kind of over that hump, so you should lend yourself some credit. um so yeah, that's definitely a good point.
Well, and I think most people want to learn from someone who's actually been there and they're not just
Right.
saying that they have. This is where I kind of want
Yeah.
to rant about the gurus now. Can we talk about that?
We sure can. Yes.
Let me get through the unique selling proposition, and then I'll go into my rant about the gurus here.
Okay.
Because that's actually going to segue into our next topic, which is about doing your own research. But so unique selling propositions. I know it sounds like a bunch of buzzword marketing garbage when I say that. Um, but it's an actual term in the marketing world where it really just means what is unique about you that is going to attract people to your product or your service or your content. That's literally all it is. And
Hmm.
so it could be as simple as, maybe you're an artist and you specialize in a certain kind of art, or maybe you're a queer person of color who writes urban fantasy novels, or like maybe you're a dad and you're doing a podcast about what it's like to be a nerdy dad, like, whatever it happens to be. That is your unique selling proposition. That's what's going to attract people to you, to your story, to your personality, like just basically everything you do within your brand.
Yeah, it also helps with writing your bio or your
Mhm.
summary
Mhm.
for your side project or hustle or whatever you want to call it. That's kind of how I came up with what's listed in iTunes or Spotify whenever you look up the Geek Garage podcast. Is
Mhm.
like I figured out like who my target audience is
Mhm.
and like what I'm trying to do, what I want to do, like the content that I put out there, and just kind of summarized all that into like a 4 to 5 sentence blurb. And that kind of became my unique selling proposition that worked dually as my podcast summary.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
and like all of this information that we were just talking about, it's useful not just from like a philosophical standpoint. It's also useful for writing content and kind of pointing yourself in a direction a little bit.
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but like I have a really hard time getting myself to just focus on one thing at a time. I want to do like 20 things.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
kind of need to have the actual why of what I'm doing and who I'm doing it for literally written down somewhere so I can go back and look at it so I'm not squirreling my brain away in a different direction because otherwise it's bad. Like I just can't focus on anything. I want to just do other stuff and it's nuts. So that's
Girl
kind of what it's
brain.
for. Yeah. We got the ad brain going on. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, so I had mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that I believe that if you're going to teach people something, you also need to teach them how to do their own research or how to, continue teaching themselves. And Google, of course, is a great resource. And this is where my rant is about to come up. You will find in the Google world when you're looking up marketing advice people who not always brand themselves as marketing gurus, they often do. And you'll get through their page and they'll have like a little bit of free content and maybe it's a little helpful. And then they slap you in the face with a $400 ebook that's going to solve all your problems.
Yeah, it contains all the secrets to
All of
marketing.
the secrets.
Yes,
All of them.
yeah, in like one sentence, it has like every single like buzzword and
Yeah.
catch term that you ever like could possibly ask for, like the the top 10 secrets to marketing in this one and only $450,000 ebook that
Yeah.
you'll never find anywhere else. It's actually discounted right now. It's usually like $1 million, but you can have it now for half that price. We're having a holiday sale.
That's literally what it is though. They have this what we like to call in marketing, it's like a false sense of urgency.
Mhm.
And like one of the reasons why I think people hate marketing is because like people aren't stupid. They know that marketing is sometimes intentionally a little misleading.
Right.
And there are people like me who like to do what's called ethical marketing, where we don't do the sense of urgency because it's bullshit.
Mhm.
Um, but you'll run into these people where like they're trying to sell you a $400 ebook, but they're like for a limited time it's only like $79. Here's the secret: it's always $79.
Right. Yeah. You think of like going to Kohl's or J.C. Penney's or some other department store where like you see something that is priced at like $80 and they're like, this weekend only, it's like $49.99 or it's like 40% off. Like, no, fucker, joke's on you. Like it is always $49.99. Like they just
Yep.
marked it up to $80 to make you feel better about yourself and your small penis. Like like and Hobby Lobby does that. Like I
Mhm.
know I'm throwing out like names here, and Hobby Lobby's gonna put me on their blacklist or some shit. But whatever. I'll just buy their stuff online under a pseudonym. But yeah, they're notorious for doing that too. I know people know this, but yeah, it's definitely one of the what did you call it? The marketing technique, like um,
Oh, it's a false sense of urgency.
yeah,
Yeah, like
God,
literally if you go Google marketing sense of urgency, you will find a million articles about how to set up sense of urgency in your market. And I'm like, stop, don't do that. It's so annoying.
right, yeah,
Please don't rush people into making decisions. And the reason why people do it is because it works. It's manipulative and I don't
right,
like it, but it works. And that's why
yeah.
people do
Yeah, it's
it.
very dirty, and I definitely would not feel comfortable doing anything like that. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of gross.
And I believe that people deserve to be paid for giving marketing advice for sure. The problem I have is these blogs that seem to claim that they're gonna like fix all your problems and blah blah blah. For one, like with the exception of a few, like I have done a lot of research the past few years, just as I've been answering questions for people, just to kind of like make sure that I'm on the right track. And I found that a lot of them, these people, like when I go to go look them up on like LinkedIn and stuff, don't have any marketing experience, like professionally. They are full of shit. Like what they do, this is literally what they do. Because I bought into one of these programs one time because I wanted to spend money to see if I was right, and I was
Sure.
horrified. What they do is that they will have a like bit of content and then they will get people to join their masterclass and they say, "Hey, I will give you this content for you to repackage and resell on your own website. You just have to rewrite it a little bit to be like within your niche or whatever.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And it's the same content over and over and over and over, and it's disgusting. As someone who does marketing, like real marketing for real companies, I want to set them on fire.
Wow. Okay. So the internet does that. It's definitely not the worst thing that I've heard about going on the internet, but you know.
So point being, when you're looking at marketing, if there's a big price tag on it, that's red flag number 1. Like,
Hmm.
just don't, like, cuz like anything that you could find in these packets are free online. I can guarantee it. Like, and it just frustrates me, and that's marketing, advice is not the only place where this is an issue. Like you said, you go to J.C. Penney's and see an $80 t-shirt that's marked as half off. Well, it's always been $40.
Right.
And that's just like a common manipulative sales tactic that unfortunately it's kind of rolled into the online marketing advice world. So it's really frustrating. But that said, there are a lot of online free advice resources that are actually really good. Specifically, really technical blogs that will explain to you not only like why you need to have an email list, but like how to set one up and like how much it costs. And a lot of the times they'll even have an affiliate link so you can get a discount on the service that they're promoting. Usually it's like MailChimp or something like that.
Hmm.
And that stuff, it's great. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, I definitely am really, really a supporter of people who don't sell courses for like $1 million, but instead will do affiliate links because they make money off of that. And like I said, I
Right.
think they have the right to make money off of that. You got to do it in a way that's ethical.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like citing your sources in like an
Mhm.
English paper or something.
Well, and like one of the biggest issues that a lot of people have right now is the Facebook algorithm.
Hmm.
The advice I've seen on how to quote unquote fight the algorithm, none of it's real. Let me just put it that way. Like, because like I've been working in marketing long enough that sometimes we get so frustrated. And when you're working at a bigger company, you have a little bit more clout to do this, where you can just email the Facebook devs and be like, what the fuck?
Right.
And most of the time, they don't even know what the hell's going on. Same with Google. We have emailed Google. Our SEO guy at work has emailed Google and then been like, I don't know. Like, are you fucking kidding me? We are paying these systems money to boost bullshit, and
Right.
they don't even know what's going on. So here's the thing, everyone: you want to fight the algorithm, you fucking can't. Good luck.
Yeah. I mean, like if it's sometimes you get geniuses at Facebook, but other times, like you said, they're just like, the algorithm is out of control. It has a mind of its own. It's actually running this place. Help us out, please.
Yeah, like there are certain things that you can do, like that. If you're paying money, you're running ads. There are certain audiences you can target, and that's how that works. But as
Right.
far as like the algorithm of like the way that things show up on your timeline, who fucking knows, man?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, yeah, it's not exactly like a surprise that if you're going to pay for advertising, like they stick your ad like in prime spots,
Hmm.
so it's more likely that people will actually see them. That doesn't necessarily dictate clicks, but it increases chances. But that's essentially how it works. But like I said, it's not necessarily a huge shocker. Uh,
Yeah. The
you're
best
basically just.
advice the best advice that I would have for Facebook specifically, again with the consistency, and also
Mhm.
frequency. The way that Facebook works is that it doesn't show anything in order by like post date.
Right.
And I think a lot of people have anxiety about posting too much, but most of the time, like if you post like 3 times a day, for example, people are only going to see one of them. So, like, don't be afraid to, like, get a little spammy on the Facebook because you kinda have to, unless you pay money. So it's like one or the other.
Yeah, I actually just saw this article. I wish I could remember the name of the website. It was a little outdated, so I'd like to research this a little bit further.
Hmm.
But it actually broke down the three main ones. It broke down Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter,
Hmm.
and how often to post and what to post.
Yeah. Hmm.
It was definitely more about like how often, and like what time of day, what time through, like what days throughout the week.
Hmm.
And it was like incredibly helpful. But like I said, um, it was from a couple years ago, so it might have changed. You know how social networking sites work. That the
Well,
things
and
change so often.
the information with those, believe it or not, it's not a bunch of bullshit. Like the way that that information is collected is through analytics. So like if you
Right.
have a Facebook page, you will have a tab at the top called Insights,
Hmm.
and it'll show you not only who's looking at your page, but like what time and that kind of thing. And there are companies who literally all they do is they do data mining, um,
Hmm.
which is one of many reasons why so many people are paranoid about their private information on Facebook. It's because it's used for marketing purposes. Let's be
Right.
real.
Hmm.
But it's important for people like us who need context. Like, do people read their Facebook timeline more on a Monday or a Tuesday? Like, and do they read it more in the morning or at night? And when you have those analytics to back that up, that's when it's more legitimate than do this to fight the algorithm. Like, shut up. That
Right.
doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But I guess the only like other thing I'd say about doing your research is the best way you can learn about what you need to be doing is to surround yourself with people who do what you do,
Hmm.
or like follow people that are successful in a way that you want to be successful. Um, it can be a little awkward because it almost feels like you're competing with them a little bit. But you kind of have to reprogram your mind and that you can only lift each other up. It's not a competition. There's so much content out there. There's so many businesses. Collaborating or being friends with someone who's doing the same thing with you isn't necessarily going to take customers away from you to them. It actually, most of the time, it actually just helps you both grow.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like that was probably one of the hardest things that I had to kind of learn and overcome over the last couple years. Like I would just shrivel up and die at the thought of going to someone who was better than me, at either podcasting or writing, or whatever I was trying to accomplish at the time. And uh, and trying to find someone and then go to them on purpose to like kind of ask for advice, not because I was like afraid to like approach this person like thinking that they were like some big important like, whatever. I was just afraid of being like shunned and
Hmm.
like put into this small. I knew that I didn't amount to shit, and I didn't want like further proof that was real.
Yeah.
But it turns out that if you actually make the efforts, if you try and stay humble and stay receptive to the fact that you're always going to be learning and improving upon your process and your product, and whatever else it is you do, it's only beneficial to constantly consult people that are better than you at whatever it is you do,
Yeah.
because they, not always, but a lot of the times, they will be more than happy to give you advice or mentor you, or whatever it is you're looking for, because more than likely 9 times out of 10 they have also been where you're at,
Hmm.
and they're more than willing to give you that advice or whatever it is you're looking for. Because like I said, they were once in your shoes. They were once just wandering around not knowing what the fuck to do.
Yeah.
And so it kind of like it makes them feel good,
Hmm.
to know that like they've kind of made it to that place. And so like I said, they're a lot of them are just willing to help out, and I've experienced that firsthand, and that's why I'm not as hesitant anymore to go find help whenever I need it. So
Well, it's one of those things too where, they were in your shoes and they probably also wish that they had had like a mentor.
Hmm.
So it's nice to be able to pay that forward a little bit. Like,
For
I'm going to
sure.
help other people with, their blog or whatever it is. Um, which is pretty common actually. I read a lot of different blogs about all kinds of things, and a lot of them have actually started creating subsections on their blog to explain what it is they do, how they got there, why they do it, and how you can do it too, which is pretty cool.
Right.
One of my favorite bloggers, she and this is like a good example of like really do your research because like I said, like some ebooks and stuff are actually pretty valuable. I liked her story so much that I bought her $50 ebook, and it was a really really long ebook and it's been really helpful. um so it's okay to spend money on that kind of stuff once in a while. Just don't be canned by the $400 gurus who claim that they have all the secrets, because they don't. So
Right. Hey everyone, it's David from the Geek Garage podcast. I just wanted to take a quick second to tell you about our new partnership with Everyday Superhero Training. They are a gym in Nashville, Tennessee that you should definitely check out. The gym is ran by Julian and Lydia, who make up the Everyday Superhero Training team. And what Everyday Superhero Training is a nerd-centric, holistic, personal training and group fitness wellness program taught through the modalities of RPGs, video games, comic books, superheroes, and pop culture nerdiness. Just a few things that they have to offer is a free digital magazine that covers everything that they nerd out about, and it is delivered straight to your email inbox. They have a soon-to-be famous Mission Quest fitness RPG, Nerd Skills, which is a class that uses specific training tactics to help you improve at activities you already enjoy, superhero tinted group classes, personal training integrated into every level of membership, a supportive and positive environment that wants to hear more about your current D&D campaign or show that you're currently binging, and then how much you can bench. So please support Julian and Lydia by visiting everydaysuperherotraining.com for more info on this amazing gym. Thank you. All right, so we just discussed doing your research and your due diligence about your marketing plan. We're going to jump now into what you actually need to focus on, the basically the meat of what don't do what it is you do. Do the thing that you do that you want to do. Does that make sense?
no.
Cool. Once again, that's why I brought Brianna on this podcast to help explain the things that don't make sense in my brain. Hey, that
So
rhymed.
you're doing great. So yeah, so we've talked about a lot of the overhead of, philosophy type stuff, and figuring out what you're doing and why you're doing it, and then how to research what it is you need to be doing. But at the end of the day, you kind of want some more actionable advice, right? And unfortunately, like, you can't really condense a whole marketing plan into like a 1 hour or so podcast episode. I could do an entire podcast series on this stuff, but I
Mm-hmm.
will give some high arching advice. So a lot of people get stuck in the concept that they kind of have to be everywhere, and I'm here to tell you, please don't, because you will burn yourself out.
Yes.
There's something in marketing called siloing, where you really want to focus on where your audience actually is, and it might be one, two, three, maybe four places instead of, the 12 places that you could be. um so like there's a few questions you might want to answer about your audience. Like, are they an audience that would actually check their email? Like, would it be worth making an email list? Or are they more active on social media? Or do they like both? Like, do you want to do both? Do they prefer one sort of social media platform other another? Does your audience congregate at certain events? Like, are you going to see them at like an anime convention or a comic book convention, or say like a gaming event? Does your audience spend a lot of time in online chat rooms or groups or forums or a meetup website, whatever have you? You need to know where they are so you can figure out how to get in front of them. But I will say it's also okay not to know that. A lot of marketing is really experimenting with your platforms. So, say you're an artist and you might want to try a Twitch stream because Twitch does have a creative Twitch stream section. You do it for 6 months, no one really shows up, and you're kind of tired of it. It's okay to just give up and
Mhm.
just focus on your Instagram and your like portfolio website or whatever. Sometimes that happens. You never know. And I work at a multi-million dollar startup company, and same thing happens to us. Like, we tried sending out a bunch of mailers like in the mail that we designed. It was beautiful. Most of them got returned. We spent a bunch of money on these mailers. We were like, let's experiment and see what happens. It was not a great return. So, like, people in the professional marketing world, we do it too. So, like, don't get discouraged if you're doing something and it doesn't work. So,
Yeah, there's with marketing. I mean, with anything within the realm of content creation or side hustles, businesses, there is going to be some bombs, like just some things that you try out to see if it works, and it just fucking doesn't work. Like when we went to GalaxyCon this past year, back in November, we had some business cards printed out, and we actually had a bunch of people ask for business cards, and so we were glad that we had some printed out. But I actually took a walk around the convention at one point in time just to see all the different exhibitors and artists that were there. And I like found one or two of my business cards on the floor, and I was like, "Welp, this is just fantastic!"
at least
Like,
you got them back and they didn't like go in the trash, which a lot of them, unfortunately, I tell people all the time, do not spend a ton of money on your business cards because most of them just
right.
go in the trash.
Yeah, I guess this would have been good to add into like the resources section, and it's too bad. I maybe you know their name. I think it's called like blue chip or something like that. But it's like a single business card that you tap on the back of your phone, and it gives you all the links that you need for
No, I've never heard
someone's.
of that. That sounds dope.
Yeah, no, it's literally the size of like a credit card, so you can stick it in your wallet.
Oh my
You only need
god.
one, and so when someone asks for a business card, like you take it out, you tap it on the back. So like you set up an account, and you add all your links to it, and so the person that you hand it to doesn't need an app or anything. Like, you just tap it on the back of your card, and it just flashes one of the things that shows like a push notification on your phone, and you slide to unlock, and then it lists all of your links, so like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, your website. And you can also do custom links too. So like, say if you have like say hypothetically speaking, Twitch isn't supported through their system. Like, you can
Hmm.
just manually add your Twitch link on there, and they can just swipe and go directly to there. So that also solves the problem of seeing who's actually interested in checking out your content, because someone could just say, "Hey, do you have a business card?" as a nice way to be like, "Hey, piss off, like, I'm done
Hmm.
talking to you right now."
Hmm.
Which I've kind of gotten in the past. Like, I've kind of gotten that vibe from people. So I thought this was an excellent resource for multiple reasons, but uh, definitely that one as well, to see who was actually interested in like hearing the podcast. So
Well, and, like, that's
um,
why I like these conversations because, like, I've been doing marketing for 8 years and I've never heard of that. And my
yeah,
mind's a little blown right now.
I'm gonna Google it real quick to see if I can find it. But yeah, it's like blue chip uh, business card or something like that. I'll find it real quick. And oh, here it is, Blue Social. Yeah.
Blue Social. Okay.
Yeah, so if you just go to like blue.social,
Hmm.
www, it's prefixed with the https colon / no, it's just blue.social. And yeah, it has there's really not much to their website. It's pretty cool. Like it's just a demo video, and I think the card is like $30, but in my opinion, money well spent because you're going to spend at least $30 getting like your first set of cards printed, anyways. Um, so you just get one card and you're done.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Okay, so let's segue right into social networking, shall we?
Yeah, so one of the things I talked about earlier was trying to figure out where your audience lives, and the same applies for social media. You don't have to be everywhere all at once. I actually don't recommend it. I recommend siloing your content, which is to say, like, focus on one or two, or even three if you want to, just so that you're not spread too thin. Because if you're trying to manage too many networks at once, you're gonna get burnt out really quickly. So, for example, if you have a Twitch stream, a lot of Twitch streamers stick to Twitter. Um, I believe because everything on Twitter is typically in sequential order. So you'll know when a streamer is going live because it's like at the top of your feed, right? Whereas most Twitch streamers don't really have a Facebook presence because if they post on Facebook, most people who follow their page are not going to see it at the time that it's posted. Um, for artists, you might want to stick to something more visual like Instagram or Pinterest. You can post on Facebook and Twitter, and a lot do, but if you are feeling a little bit overwhelmed, it's okay to just focus on those two, and that's fine.
Mhm.
And again, like it's okay to be everywhere. Just make sure you're not like you're doing it with intention and purpose, and not just because you feel like you have to do it.
Yeah, this was definitely a thing that I had to focus on myself whenever I first started the podcast. Like I was like, oh, like I feel like I need to be everywhere, like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, uh, TikTok wasn't a thing at the time, but just all these different platforms. Now it's like I feel like I need to be everywhere, and it's kind of the opposite. Like uh, I'd say my biggest audience and listenership and followership is probably Facebook,
Hmm.
and a close second with Instagram, which is odd because Instagram, like you said, you kind of associate it with visual stuff like
Hmm.
pictures, artwork. Um, and podcasting is obviously audio, but like I get a lot of interaction on Instagram, and that's because it's like really popular.
Hmm.
I think people, I think it also like breaks things up a
Hmm.
little bit for them. Aside from seeing like selfies all day long, you see something else, so it kind of like breaks things up for people. So yeah, I definitely echo and agree with what you said. Where like if you feel like you don't want to be everywhere, like that's perfectly fine.
Well, and I think it's funny how you said that you're on Instagram, but it doesn't really make sense. It kind of goes back to you sometimes don't know where your audience is going to engage more, and if you're getting more engagement on Instagram, it might not make a lot of sense. But I mean, if that's where you're getting engagement, that's where you need to focus because that's
Right.
just where your audience lives.
Yeah, I didn't know that we should have had a YouTube channel, but like at MTAC or the Middle Tennessee Anime Convention, for those of you that aren't aware of MTAC, and we were talking to people about the podcast, and they were like, "Are you guys on YouTube?" And we're like, "No, because we don't do video with our audio. It's just audio because it's a podcast." And we weren't smart asses about it. We were just like we didn't realize that that was a thing, and they're like, yeah, we get all of our like internet content from YouTube, so it would just be cool to get it all in one place. And we don't really care if it's even just like a still shot for an hour or 2 hours, however long the podcast is. And we're like, oh, okay, well, that definitely makes sense. So from that day onward, we had a YouTube channel and we upload to it. Granted, we definitely don't have like the biggest subscribe list of all time, but that we definitely know people listen to our podcast via YouTube, so we make it a priority to upload there.
Well, and it's important, like once you are getting an audience, to kind of talk to them about their preferences too, because you sometimes you just don't know.
Yeah.
And if they say, "Hey, you should be on YouTube," you should probably be on YouTube, you know?
Hmm.
And worst case, like, you do it for 6 months, it doesn't work, and then, like, if someone asks you, "Why aren't you on YouTube?" Like, "Well, because it just wasn't working for me." But at least you can back it up with, like, an experience of it wasn't working for me as opposed to, "Well, I just didn't feel like doing it," you know? So, again, with the marketing, it's all experiments to figure out what it is you need to be doing and when.
Right.
Which I know it can be a little bit frustrating because people just like have instructions just handed to them on a silver platter, but every single person's case is different.
Hmm.
So you just kind of like gotta have to just get into it and try it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, so we touched on quite a few things with social networking. We actually just have straight up networking next. And this basically translates to good old fashioned face to face time. Am I correct?
Yeah, this is something, at least within my network of friends and colleagues, that's been kind of a struggle because a lot of us, we just kind of like want to hide behind our screens and not
Right.
interact with people. And that's not the case for anyone. Like, some people love, the face to face interaction. But, when you've been doing, say, like a web comic for a few years and you're not really like an outwardly social person, when you suddenly get big enough to go buy a promo table at like an artist alley, like it's terrifying because you don't
Hmm.
know how people are going to interact. You don't know how people are going to react to your artwork. It's a little scary, but I'm telling you, it's so important. Not just for growing your audience, but for like personal growth as well.
Right.
Um, I remember when I first had to start doing networking in college for my career, I hated it because like I couldn't relate to anybody at these like tech events that I kept going to see if I can find a job. And then what really helped me is I started going to these conventions where people were a little bit like on the nerdy side and I could talk to them about like video games and stuff. And
Hmm.
that's where it really clicked for me, where like my problem wasn't that I was afraid to talk to people. I really just needed to be able to have something to talk about.
Right.
So if you're kind of like in the nerdy niche like Dave and I are, I think it's important to go to conventions. You don't necessarily have to buy a promo table. Although, Dave, you had a promo table recently. How did that go?
So I've talked about this a few times recently, mainly on the episode we did on a recap for GalaxyCon.
Mhm,
So GalaxyCon was basically our first, like, what we refer to as our first official like um, con outing. But yeah, GalaxyCon back in November. It was so incredibly beneficial to us at the time of just where we were at the podcast, where we were kind of like, we felt like we were hitting a wall with gaining more and more listeners, and that's because we essentially were like, uh, we're still in like the quote unquote infant or baby phase of like podcasting, because some podcasts have been around for a really long time, 10 plus years, and that's quite a while. And 3 years, is still, a brief period of time. It's respectable, but yeah. Anyways, we felt like we were kind of hitting a wall where, we talked to our friends and we talked to our friends' friends and our family. So everyone like that, we immediately could reach out to say like, hey, like, please check out the podcast. Like, if it's not your thing, we respect that, but like, take a minute or two to listen, see if it's up your alley, and then like tell your friends. Like, we did all that, and we're like, okay, we need to take it to the next level and start meeting people that we have no fucking clue who they are.
mhm,
And we realized that going to conventions could be beneficial because, one, you're doing just that. You're meeting people who you've never met before. You're getting that face to face time, which you don't know how beneficial it would be, but turns out it is so incredibly beneficial, like to talk to people face to face, because the people that go to conventions, like, some are a little socially awkward, some are not, and then there's people in between, and but they're all there, and they're obviously there to, like, interact with in some form or fashion. So if they take the time to stop by your booth, or wherever you're set up at, they're showing interest. So it's, like I said, it's just For us, it was very beneficial, and just in general, like getting that face to face time, because, like you were alluding to, it's just good to mix up the physical and the digital.
Mhm.
Um, every once in a while, because we've gotten into this mindset, and um, just the way we work, where it's all digital,
Mhm.
which makes sense because the ease of use of it all. It's a little bit easier, rather than like taking all of your trade show materials, like your banner and your tablecloth and all that, and
Mhm.
setting up for an entire weekend and talking for 8 to 10 hours for 3 days straight. It's a little exhausting,
Mhm.
and mentally and physically demanding, but holy shit, like, is it worth it? Is it profitable? And it wasn't monetarily profitable, but like, we saw a huge spike in listenership afterwards,
Mhm.
and as well as like interaction on social media. It was, yeah, like I said, just overall very beneficial to get that physical networking in there.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, I think people, whether they realize it or not, crave social interaction because
Mhm.
we are social creatures, like scientifically, if we want to
Right.
get deep into it, and so it's important, even if you're not really an outgoing type person. I think it's good for people, unless you have like really really staggering like social anxiety, then don't trigger yourself or anything like that.
Mhm.
But um, getting out of the house and honestly out of your own head is really
Yes.
important. And I'll also say too, like, in order to promote at a convention or to network, you don't necessarily have to buy a promo table because depending on the event you go to, they can get a little expensive. But one thing that a lot of folks don't know, and check with the convention before you do it because you might get kicked out for it, but always ask first. Sometimes, especially in like the artist alleys, you can split a table.
Yeah.
So if you want to go in with someone, as long as what you're doing is related, like I don't think you can mix like a podcast and an artist, but if you were like two podcasters, that's a really good example. I had a friend one time who at Gen Con, he and several webcomic artists went in together. And what was really cool about it is that I can't remember the name of the comic, but he's like one of the most popular webcomic artists on the internet right now. Um, Went in with them on it.
Hmm.
And it was wonderful because not only did people get to meet him, but they got to meet all of the other lesser known webcomic artists. And that goes kind of full circle back into like we lift each other up. We're not competing
Yes.
with each other.
Yes,
Um,
that is. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways, like, from this part of the podcast episode, and just in general, is that, like, try to defeat that competing mindset. Like, it doesn't have to exist if you choose to not let it exist. Like, you have to welcome in this mindset of, that we're all in this together,
mhm.
and we lift each other up. And like I say, it can be like that, where we don't compete against each other. You know.
Yeah, we're not like Coca-Cola versus Pepsi, like,
Right.
we're
Yeah.
just content creators trying to get our stuff out or small business owners, and it's
Right.
it's a little bit different when you're down in the trenches as opposed to like a multi-billion dollar company.
Right. There's room for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. Like you don't just read one comic series, or you don't just listen to one podcast, you don't just
Exactly.
follow one artist, you can do
Exactly.
more than one. So
Yeah.
I had mentioned, getting out of the house and getting out of your head is important. And anxiety and stuff. One thing I wish more people would talk about when it comes to marketing and self promotion is mental health.
Absolutely.
Um, we had done a presentation at GMX, RIP GMX, an old
Yes.
convention we used to go to that no longer is
Mhm.
running. We had done a panel there about this, and one of the not only like was it important for us to talk about it, but we thought it was important for our audience, and I think it was like probably looking back the most well received part of our presentation was talking about the mental health aspect.
For sure.
um I think a lot of people forget that like at the end of the day we're trying to hustle and self promo, but we're also people.
Hmm.
and you can't promo if you're not taking care of the person.
Right.
um so of course, I'm not a medical professional, obviously. But all of this is kind of coming from my own personal experience. um Sometimes your mental health gets in your way, a lot of the times more than you realize. I have had depression, anxiety for a very long time, and I am on medication for that. But I'm recently discovering, through friends, that I'm probably an undiagnosed ADHD person, which would explain a lot about the issues that I have with like actually producing content on a consistent timeline.
Yay,
Um,
ADHD buddies.
yeah, and when my friends were telling about it, I was like, man, that makes so much sense. So, like, I fully support taking care of your noggin
Mm-hmm.
before you do anything else. Now,
Yes.
it's easier said than done. I know that one, having the resources, like the money or the insurance or whatever, to go to a therapist, to go to a doctor, or whatever, is sometimes unavailable. And also, even if it is, it can be really, really scary and hard. I think it took me like 7 years before I finally convinced myself to go, and I wish I'd gone earlier, but that's a different segue. But um, if you can't do those things, talk to your friends. If you go to college, a lot of the times colleges will have free resources for stuff like that. Like I actually went to a psychologist in college for free, which was great. Um, you can also just look up articles. Like there's a website called Psychology Today, which is actually the website where I found my therapist. That
Mm-hmm.
has a lot of really good articles about how to kind of self treat your anxiety a little bit. Do I think it's the best way to do it? No, but sometimes realistically, it's like all you can afford to do, right?
Right.
Or you're just not ready to go see a professional about it yet. So you want to like tip tip your foot in the water a little bit before you deep dive in, and that's okay. Like I'm an advocate for therapy, but if you're not ready, don't force yourself to go, for sure. But it's important, like as like a small business owner or a content creator, to know that sometimes that can get in your way, and not to beat yourself up over it.
Mm-hmm.
There are some days where I'm working on stuff on my personal website, which the plug is nerdetdesigns.com. And as nothing gets done because I can't focus, or like I'm not feeling well, or whatever the case may be. Maybe I had a bad day at work and I'm just burnt out. But there are just some days where like you kind of just have to let yourself fail a little bit, and that's okay. Which took me a very long time to realize, that it's okay to just not do something sometimes. Do I want
Right.
to be productive 100% of the time? Sure, but it's not realistic. Like no one can be a machine all the time.
Yeah.
I wish I could. Be great. But there's just some days you just gotta let yourself play video games for a few hours and then try again tomorrow. I think it
Yeah.
becomes more of a problem where you should probably seek help, is where like if months have gone by and the thing you're trying to do hasn't happened, you should probably get help. Because I've
Right.
been there, like, and that's why I'm on medication. So um
Yeah, I can definitely relate to the whole, just letting yourself take a day off or a week off or however long you feel
mhm,
like you may need to just give your brain a rest from trying to, expedite your material or your content, whatever it is you're trying to do. Because like I sometimes I come home from work with intentions on either busting out a podcast, doing research for an upcoming episode,
mhm,
whatever it is. I'll be planning it for the whole day at work, and then I come home and I'm either so exhausted from work, or like the kids are nuts, or just my mental health, kind of like we're talking about, it is just not not where it needs to be
mhm,
that day or maybe that week or month. Then I'll take some time off. I'll make a post on social media, be like, hey, like no content this week, like maybe I'll do like a blog post instead, or something that's a little
mhm,
less like mentally taxing, or like just sharing like an article from like cbr.com or like IGN.
mhm.
Do like it's good to have those like backups that are like easy
It's
things
to
to
keep
do.
it's to keep your audience engaged to let people know that you haven't like vanished off the side of the planet or anything like that.
Right.
But
Exactly.
also most of the time people are really resonate when you're just really honest. You're like, hey, like I'm not having a great mental health week. I'll see you all next week. Here's a really cool
Yeah.
article. And most people will just be like, hell yeah, have a good
Props.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Props. Like I think it was Passion Pit that I forget his name, but like a year or two ago, like he
Hmm.
made a post on social media, and Brianna, it might have actually been you that posted it. Where he talked about how he was dealing with some mental health
Yep.
issues and he was taking some time off from making music and touring, and I was like, "Fucking
Yep.
props to you, dude! Like, hell yeah!" For and being a musician, someone that's kind of like solely responsible for making their own music and just making music in general, like it's so demanding
Hmm.
because like we tend to think of musicians as like, no pun intended, but like rock stars where they're just
Yeah.
raking in the cash. And really, that's not the case for a vast majority of them. Like, they have to work really fucking hard because, like, artists, like, they don't make a whole lot of money off of their
Mm-mm.
music. So for them to like stop doing all that is kind of like a big deal. Uh,
Mhm.
and so when he was willing to like do that and make the statement that he was making the choice because of, he needed to address, mental health issues. Like I had a newfound respect for him. So that should never be something that you you hesitate on.
Mhm.
Like if you don't want to share that part of your quote unquote story, like you don't feel obligated to, but know that like any decent human being isn't going to hold it against you, right?
Yeah, and if they do, you don't want them in your audience. Like, literally tell them to
Exactly.
fuck off and then block them
Yeah,
from your page.
exactly. Like
Like,
you don't
it's
need
your
that.
content. Te
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is 2020. You don't need that kind of negativity in your life.
Yeah, exactly, like, fuck them.
Yeah.
That is
Um,
the theme of 2020, fuck them.
well, you heard it right here on the Geek Garage podcast. Is 2020 fuck them?
I mean, it's an election year, that's pretty much how the election years go.
God, don't remind me. It's 2020 fuck them.
Anyway,
Well, I
um,
mean, it is a brief interruption from the hey, I don't know what's going to happen this year. I don't have 2020 vision, or the I'm Barbara Walters, and this is
this is
and this
2020.
this is 2020. I'm like, fuck.
Is this the first episode recording for 2020?
So it's not yes and no. So our first episode, which by the time this releases, it'll
Uh-huh.
be after
Oh, okay.
the first one. But the first one we're releasing is under Geek Garage Goes to the Movies. So this
Gotcha.
will be the first main show episode of 2020. So to answer your question, yes and no. So.
Just curious.
All right, so I think we only have a couple more things to touch on for this episode. We'll go into some marketing resources, if that's cool.
So yeah, I'd mentioned a few times during the podcast different types of resources, but I wanted to sum them up at the end here. So most of these actually will have more resources on their website. So if you need to learn more about social media or email marketing or whatever it is that you plan to do, there's a lot of really great content on them. One of the ones we had talked about was Hootsuite. And there is a free version of it that you can use for scheduling your social posts. So if you don't want to have to post everything manually, and I really recommend that you don't because you will lose your fucking mind, um, Hootsuite is a really good free app for that. If you need a logo designed and you don't have the money to pay a logo designer, there is a website called Place It, like Place It,
Hmm.
that actually has some pretty robust logo options. You know, the downfall is that there is the chance that someone else will be using the same sort of logo as you, but there are so many options to change like the colors and the fonts and the style of it that honestly like the chances of that are pretty slim. I always recommend to people if they don't have money to invest in a brand, go ahead and use a logo maker like Placeit so that you have something that looks good. And then later on, once you have the more resources and the money, then hire a brand designer to make your shit look good. Because otherwise, you don't want to start with a bad logo because then no one's going to take you seriously. But Place It, highly recommend it. VectEasy is also a place where you can get free logo or just graphic design stuff from. Pexels.com is a place to find stock images. So if you write a blog and need images for your posts, that's a really good place to find them. MailChimp, if you think that your audience is going to be checking their email for your content, you can set up a free account with Mailchimp for that. Uh,
Mailchimp is great, by the
oh, it's
way,
amazing.
and email marketing is not dead.
It's definitely not dead.
Yeah, like if you come across someone who says like, "Oh, who does email marketing anymore?" Like a lot of fucking people, because a lot of
Everyone,
people, yeah, like I mean, granted, it's like you mentioned earlier in the podcast, like not everyone is going to be checking their email,
mhm,
but like there's a lot of people that work office jobs, and I'm not going to lie, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I check my personal email while I'm at work. Granted, I'm not sitting in my email account like all day long,
right.
but like maybe I'll take like 5 minutes or so, or like during lunch, like I'll check my personal email,
Mhm,
and so like yeah, like uh, definitely use Mailchimp or some other form of email marketing that's easily accessible and usable, because both Brianna and I worked for an email marketing company for a long period of time, and we can attest to the fact that that email is not dead,
yeah,
not yet at
we have
least.
the numbers to prove it,
Right?
literally.
Yeah. Yes, it's quite insane the amount of money that companies spend on email marketing. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
just email by itself. The
Yeah.
only advice I'd give about email marketing, and again, this is one of those things where I could do an entire episode about it, is
Mhm.
a lot of people will opt into your email list if there is some incentive that is email specific. So, say for example, you run an Etsy store and you set up a 20% coupon or what have you, make it an email exclusive,
Mhm.
and they will
Yeah.
sign up for that shit.
Yeah,
Um,
that is definitely a good idea.
Kind of the same with Patreon, which is another one of our resources on the list. The content that you post on Patreon, which gives people the incentive to give you money, whether it be like $1 or $100 per month, um, make it exclusive or make it early release.
Yeah.
That way, people have an advantage of like it's more like an exchange and less like a
Mhm.
donation.
Yeah, yeah, it's so I just that's one of the big changes or incorporations of 2020 that I'm doing for the podcast, and I've made a couple announcements about this so far.
Hmm.
But we're starting up our Patreon again. It's kind of always existed, but I never really promoted it
Hmm.
because I wanted to focus purely on the content. But now,
Hmm.
since we're doing things like conventions and we're doing ads every once in a while, I'd like to kind of break even. And just like you said, it's good to think of it as more of an exchange rather than like begging for money.
Hmm.
And on the note of like using this as a resource, and like these resources, like having articles and blog posts and stuff, like Patreon actually has some really great and up to date
Hmm.
posts and articles about how to go about like setting up your Patreon, like asking your listeners, your viewers, your whoever you're marketing your content or your stuff to, like how to go about asking them for money,
Hmm.
and all different kinds of like very useful stuff, because it was something that me and my co-host Ted were very like trepidatious about. Like we were very like scared to come off as like begging,
Hmm.
and Patreon is really good with like writing these articles addressing those issues, because they know exactly where you're coming from. Like they understand that you don't want to sound like a beggar. You just kind of want to be compensated for the hard work that you put into your stuff
Yeah.
that you produce. So definitely, like if you go the route of Patreon, definitely check out some of their articles. Like they're kind of all over the place on their website. They're not hard to find. So
Yeah,
yeah,
they have really, really good advice on that website for sure. Um, One of the issues that I've noticed is common within the small business and or content creator communities is not having access to graphic design resources without commissioning someone. Which is fine if you have the money, but if you don't, there's actually an online app called Canva,
yes,
which is incredible.
yeah,
It is easily, so for context, my side of marketing is actually very heavily based in graphic design. And that's mostly what I do. Now, I do know a lot about marketing in general that feeds my graphic design experience, but I have looked at the templates on Canva and like not only are they absolutely legitimate, but they're gorgeous.
yeah.
And they will make you look like a pro. Like not just that you pulled a template from somewhere, like it makes you look like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, all of my resumes recently, within the last, I want to say 3 to 5 years, they've all come from Canva,
Yeah.
and for good reason. Like they have excellent color schemes, excellent layouts. Like they have templates for any possible, like profession that you could think of.
Mhm.
I mean, granted, they might be lumped into like certain categories. They might not be super niche, but there's definitely a template out there for everyone. And just like Brianna said, like they're beautiful. They're very well laid out. So you just open one up and just kind of plug things in. And it's not just resumes. It's like one sheets and like infographics,
Mhm.
all kinds of cool shit that they have on Canva, and a lot of it's free. Like they do have some like pro versions where you pay for stuff, but yeah, Brianna, you obviously know a little bit more about the paid.
Yeah,
Uh,
like I'm blessed with the ability to just use Adobe because that's what
mhm,
I do for a living. I have
right.
the entire suite. But there have been some times where I've been in a pinch and I just used Canva
Yeah.
as a professional designer because I just don't sometimes I don't have the creative juice and I'm on a tight deadline. I just got to get it out the door. Um, there are some advantages to having a paid Canva account. One of them is that you have access to all the premium templates, and they also have like clip art and those types of
Right.
things that you could use that aren't exactly free. But honestly, like most of their free stuff is amazing. So like
Yeah.
don't
Oh
feel
yeah.
pressured to pay for it. But if you find yourself using it a lot, I definitely support people throwing money at that platform because
Mhm.
a lot of designers have a bad rep for good reason for being a little snobby against stuff like Canva. But
Sure.
if it's more accessible, I think it's better for everyone.
Yeah.
Um, so I definitely support Canva. I know a lot of designers don't, but they can suck off. So
Yeah, that kind of goes alongside the next one you have on our list, which is Squarespace.
yeah,
I mean, like I kind of got my. I'm a software developer, and I got my start with like development and web development at first
same. Hmm.
before I moved to software. And like for me to say that I support Squarespace is saying something. Like just like you said with some designers being snobby towards a product like Canva. Like Squarespace is an excellent solution if you don't have the money and resources to throw at a professional web developer at the
Yeah.
moment. Like if you need something that's like free, or you know you only have like $50 or $40 or whatever, and you just want to go, like it is a great resource for a first website if you just want to like go ahead and get your shit out there.
And you
um,
can transfer it afterwards too. You're not stuck or beholden to Squarespace. I think that's a lot of people get anxiety where they get into Squarespace and they might want to transfer it to something else. You have the right to do that. Like they can't
sure.
hold your stuff. Like I don't think they can legally do that. Um
Yeah.
yeah, like transferring from Squarespace is very, very common. It's actually something have a as a designer slash web developer have done a lot of migrations from Squarespace into something more robust, which is WordPress.
Mhm.
I love WordPress, but I
I
don't
do too.
recommend it for beginners at all.
Yeah, there's a huge learning curve to
Mhm,
WordPress. It's fantastic when you have learned how to use it, and there are plenty of, like, YouTube tutorials,
mhm,
and tutorials elsewhere like Udemy, to learn how to use WordPress if you've
mhm.
kinda, like, tinkered with Squarespace, which, I mean, is definitely a good jumping off point, or stepping stone to get to WordPress is coming from Squarespace. But just like Brianna said, like it's an excellent like content management tool for your website. I use it for Geek Garage. Like that's what powers the Geek Garage website. But just like Brianna said, uh, it's not recommended for beginners because there is a lot to it.
Well, in Squarespace also, they support e-commerce, which is important for a lot of people who sell online. To the point where like a lot of really big names have started using it, which is
Mhm.
really impressive because Squarespace is kind of like an out of the box solution. It's
Yes.
both a website host and also a website builder,
Mhm.
which is amazing. You can also register your domain there, I believe, so you can kind of just do everything at once.
Yep.
For context, previously you would have to like go to a website like GoDaddy to register your domain, and then you'd have to go
Right.
to another website to get it hosted, and then you'd
Hmm.
have to go to WordPress and download it. And it was
Hmm.
just like a nightmare. And like, I mean, at this point, I'm used to it because I'm a web developer. But when you're a beginner, like, I ran a friend through how to do this the other day because for personal reasons, she wanted to be on something more robust, and
Hmm.
she just was so frustrated that I finally told her I was like, just buy me lunch or something, and I'll show you how to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I big proponent of Squarespace. Go Squarespace. It's amazing. The
Mhm.
again, the templates look professional. Don't be afraid to use a template. It is way better than trying to do it on your note on your own if you don't know what you're doing, because then it just looks like shit.
Right.
Use a template.
All
Templates are
yeah.
great.
Also, shout out to Squarespace. Hey, if you want to sponsor this podcast, hit me up because I will definitely plug your shit. Like, I know you're like the official sponsor for like every single podcast out there,
Hmm.
but as a web and software developer, I can attest to how great your product is. So if you want to sponsor my podcast, I will let you.
They might have an affiliate program. You might just have to sign up. You've had your podcast for 3 years now. They'd probably be like, hell yeah.
Yeah, I might. That's kind of what, like, alongside Patreon, I've also started looking into sponsorships.
Hmm.
I know most of them they go off of like how many downloads
Sure.
you have per month, but like you said, they a lot of them have affiliate programs where if you produce content at a certain rate or meet some other requirements other than just strict download numbers, then they have other options. So.
Well, a lot of them don't really care as much about the numbers now because it's so easy to set up an affiliate program on the back end now
Mhm.
that, worst case, you give someone an affiliate link and it creates no sales. That's literally all that happens. Like, you're
Right.
not going to lose money giving someone an affiliate link.
Yeah.
So it's definitely worth looking into. I don't recommend doing it until you've been online for at least like maybe a year because if you are brand new, it's usually an automatic no. But if you've been around
Mhm.
for a while and can show that you're dedicated, and they're like, yeah, here's a link,
Yeah.
help you make some money.
Yeah. For sure.
Anyway, that's all I had to talk about today.
Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Uh, no, I think we have touched on pretty much everything. I'm going to compile some condensed version of these notes with Brianna's blessing,
Hmm.
because a good portion of our notes for this evening's podcast episode were provided by her. So I'm going to get with her after the recording and figure out a way to condense them so it doesn't seem like I'm plagiarizing. But just for the ability of our listeners to be able to go to the website, check the show notes, and
Hmm.
have be able to go back and get links for everything that we listed out, especially the Blue Social business card.
Oh yeah, for
You
sure.
know, I just using that as a specific instance because I know a lot of people, they listen to podcasts either while they're working or while they're driving and don't necessarily have a way to write stuff down.
Mhm.
We definitely don't want people texting and driving, or
Mm-mm.
trying to take notes on their phone while they drive. So I try and provide notes for them to go back to if need be. So
Well,
so
and
yeah,
also, if anyone's interested in kind of doing a deep dive on any of these topics, I'm actually about to re-release my website, nerdatdesigns.com, with all this information and like a more detailed, actionable context, specifically for geeks and nerds and gamers. So
yeah.
if you're interested in that type of content and you're in that niche, that's definitely something that I will be writing about on my website. It is also a portfolio website, but it is not necessarily just going to be a graphic design portfolio. It's also going to be an online resource. So if you need help with stuff, you can just email me, and I'm okay with that.
Well, Brianna, on that note, we'll go ahead and sign off. But thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that we've been buddies for a while now, and it was great to kind of tackle this topic in this capacity in the long format rather than kind of being restricted to a time period of 55 minutes when we had to do it in
That's the thing about
condensed email
conventions.
form.
You get rushed out the door.
Yeah, it's it is what it is, but this was awesome to be able to take our time with
Mhm.
explaining things. I feel like it was very beneficial. I mean, for me personally, because a lot of this stuff I hadn't really thought about or considered.
Mhm.
Um, so not to make it sound like I had some sort of ulterior motive here, but I definitely want. I thought that what you had to bring to the table would have been very beneficial to a lot of our listeners,
Mhm.
which kind of helps me tie this episode in general to the podcast
Mhm.
because it's not necessarily like geek media related, learning about how to market your brand, but a lot of people uh, that enjoy geek and nerd related things like the MCU and anime and cosplay and going to conventions. They also have things of their own that they do, whether they're a Twitch streamer or they create content on YouTube. They sew nerdy sweatpants with materials from Joann's, whatever it is.
Mhm.
They those the people that uh, do all those things, they have side gigs of their own. So that's kind of why I thought this kind of information and what you could bring to the table would be an extremely valuable podcast episode
For
to
sure.
deliver for the show. And I just I can't think of any better way to thank you other than to say thank you. And I too will buy you lunch the next time I see you, whenever that
Great.
is.
I'm
Um,
very food I'm very food motivated, much like a cat.
Yeah, yes. Well, I have a dog, and he eats table scraps all the time. He basically just follows my kids around and waits for them to drop food on the floor, and he's like, I like these kids. I used to not like them back when they were just babies, but now that they drop food all the time, then
Now that they walk and talk and drop food, they're great.
yeah, they're my best friend. Um, But yeah, we'll go ahead and sign off. Brianna, once again, thank you so much for coming on and
Yeah.
imparting such great wisdom to me and our listeners. And we will see you next time. And remember, be kind, stay geeky, and eat lots of cheesecake. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Uh,
Oh, that's the podcast.
and that is the podcast.